What's going on, y'all? It's J.D. PicKell. Today on the Hard Count, we're going to go into the Sark tank and talk about Texas after their media day. It feels like the same song and the third verse at the University of Texas at Austin, and Steve Sarkisian took the podium for Big 12 Media Day, answering everything from the quarterback race to the defense to recruiting to how he's going to bring Texas back, which has really been the question for as long as I can remember since Mack Brown left. It really has been the question since Mack Brown left. Now, I'm honestly a really big fan of Steve Sarkisian, the first of which being he's coached at a lot of really premier institutions. Alabama, USC, did a great job at Washington. I know the USC thing kind of flamed out as a head coach, but he did a great job as an assistant for a really long time when USC was the USC of old. They were winning national titles left and right. So I think that he has a chance to be really successful at Texas. He's honestly my favorite pick they've had since they fired is a strong word. Since Mack Brown left, okay? He's, I think, the best guy for the job since that point in time. The reason which being the two guys before him, Charlie Strong and Tom Herman, are both coming from programs to where you hadn't had remotely the same pressure you do at Texas. Now, Texas is its own beast. I don't know if you can ever replicate that anywhere else, but if you're going to look at somewhere else to where there's the same amount of pressure, you look at USC and you look at Alabama. Like, you want to talk about pressure and expectations, both those programs, the alumni, the boosters, all of those are, I would say, maybe comparable to Texas. Definitely not the same. Texas is its own thing, to get me wrong, but it's comparable. And so the fact that he's dealt with that pressure before and been able to be successful at both those institutions, that says a lot to me and gives me a lot of confidence about Sark going forward. And the biggest thing that I think we talk about with Texas every single time is they have great talent. They always recruit. They always have the facilities. They have the financial prowess, which it seems like we talk about in just about every video right now. Again, they have the highest college football brand value of any other program in the country at $1.1 billion. That's right, billion with a B. And then the highest revenue at $216 some odd million. There's a lot of firepower, and there's no reason why Texas shouldn't be good, including their recruiting classes that seem to be top 10, top 5, even top 3 in some cases as of late. But Steve Sarkisian did a great job addressing that and talking about the culture and the team-first mentality buy-in that needs to happen for them to be successful.
We still got a lot of work to do, but I love where we're at, and I love the mindset of our team at this point of developing a team-first mentality, which I think our players have bought into and are kind of making come to life now in the summer.
And that is why Texas can potentially be a contender for the Big 12 title if they're able to get that culture, if they're able to get that buy-in. He's saying we have guys that are now beginning to buy in. Don't get it wrong. They are recruiting with the best of them. They are getting the right guys to Texas, but the knock is always, well, you're not developing them. And the stats would agree. There's been 2 first-round picks in the last 10 years. With all the blue chip guys that Texas brings in, that should not be the case. And it's because of buy-in, it's because of development. And so for Sarkisian, a guy that's been around a lot of places that have developed great talent and bringing in a staff that has developed great talent from the NFL and other places, they have a chance to finally break the cancerous culture that's been in place for so long at UT. And speaking more to the culture at UT, a lot of what Sark said was impressive to me when he talked about addressing what the job at Texas entails outside of just the football field.
You don't accept a job and you only get part of the job. You get all of the job. And at the University of Texas, the expectations are very high. The standard, the bar is set very high. So, you have to embrace it and understand what they are. The next part of that is okay, understand what they are, but then what are you doing to try to achieve what is that standard, what is that bar, what are those expectations?
Again, every coach comes into the University of Texas and acknowledges, hey, there's a different standard here. The alumni has a different expectation. Everyone has a different expectation. But Charlie Strong come from Louisville, which was a Group of 5 program at the time. Tom Herman coming from Houston, which was a Group of 5 program at the time. They can acknowledge those expectations, but having never really been under it, you can't replicate the standard. You can't replicate the expectations of what a school like University of Texas at Austin puts on you as a head coach. Now, USC and Bama, Steve Sarkisian's acquainted with that. Like, he's been there and had to deal with that before. With Nick Saban's your boss, talk about expectations. No alumni, no booster will ever have a higher expectation for Steve Sarkisian than Nick Saban. So let's just get that out of the way. I think Steve Sarkisian is now equipped to deal with the pressure that this job is going to bring upon him and bring upon this program. I think he's built for it. I think he's ready for it. The fact that he took this job and acknowledged it in that press conference, I think he's ready for it. Also, he mentioned now you have to go figure out a way to address those expectations, right? You have to find a way to answer the call to action. And when you look at what he's been able to do in recent history, not counting what he did at USC, which, again, that's his own personal thing. We won't get into that too much. But looking at what he did at University of Alabama, I'm not so much sold that Mac Jones is an elite quarterback and Steve Sarkisian made him a Heisman Trophy finalist. Steve Sarkisian also was the same guy who was working with the quarterbacks with Matt Leinart, Carson Palmer. Like, he's been around dudes that have been phenomenal and been around systems that have been phenomenal. And so I think he's going to finally put these players in position to succeed. And I think that's been the thing year in and year out is they haven't found a way to capitalize on the talent that's at UT. Look at what he did at Alabama last year. He had 3 guys on his offense that were up for the Heisman between Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, and Mac Jones. And you look at how they used Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith was lining up anywhere and everywhere, going in different motions, finding a way to get him the football in space to where he could play his best ball and have his strengths accentuated. If he's able to even do a fraction of that with what UT has on offense, I think they have a chance to be really good in the Big 12. Now, granted, Alabama's roster is second to none. They had NFL players all over the place, so I want to make sure we mention that. But UT still has a lot of talent. Like, UT still has the offensive firepower to make a whole lot of noise in the Big 12 if their defense can keep up with them. Lastly, quarterback position, right? Got to talk about that. Got to talk about the quarterback race, and of course, he got peppered with questions, but I love so much that he's going to give these guys more than just the spring to pick a starter. He addressed that in his press conference.
I just didn't feel like 15 practices was enough to name a guy a starter in a brand new system, a brand new scheme with brand new coaches. I will say it is a little bit of a luxury for me to have 2 quality quarterbacks like this.
Now, Sark giving both of these guys more than just the spring before he names a starter is a phenomenal move for a couple of reasons. One that he named right off the bat. 15 practices, new scheme, new staff. You don't know a lot about these guys yet. Everyone's still getting their feet wet, trying to digest the offense, trying to digest the playbook, and get comfortable and get in where they fit in. You're not necessarily firing on all cylinders when you first get your offensive playbook. That takes time. That takes repetition, cohesion. And 15 practices, quite frankly, just isn't enough. Now, the sentiment feels like, from everything I've read and everything that we've heard, Casey Thompson's probably going to be the guy. Hudson Card is phenomenal talent, but it's hard to discredit what Casey Thompson did in that Alamo Bowl last year. 4 touchdowns in the second half, stepping in relief of Sam Ehlinger. Like, the guy is a baller. Don't get me wrong, they're both ballers. And that's not to say Hudson Card can't still win the job, but it feels like maybe Casey Thompson has an ever so slight lead as it pertains to the race heading into fall camp. So this is also a brilliant move because whoever he picks, if he were to pick a starter after the spring, guaranteed the other one's out of there in the transfer portal. And he already said, hey, I'm not worried about that. I'm not losing sleep over that. If it happens, it happens. But given the one-time transfer rule, you better believe you can't keep Casey Thompson and Hudson Card on your roster as badly as Steve Sarkisian might want to. He even went as far to say, maybe you need to use 2 quarterbacks. You probably can't go a 14, 13-game season and have them both stay healthy the entire time. And I think that's true. I think there's some validity to that, but it becomes a lot harder to transfer during the season for these kids. And it's a benefit for Steve Sarkisian being the CEO of his company, being the CEO of Texas football, to have both these young gunslingers on your roster as you move throughout the season. So I like the fact that he's playing his cards the way that he is, no pun intended. I think the fact that Casey Thompson is going to be the starter is something that we need to acknowledge, and we'll acknowledge a little sooner rather than later, because he said, hey, I got to pick my gut at some point. I got to pick a quarterback and go with my gut at some point. I think that will be Casey Thompson just because of the physical tools he has and what we saw him do on tape. Hudson Card, I don't know enough about, obviously, because we haven't seen him in real game action just yet. But the fact that Casey Thompson played so well and the fact that they're going to let this go into the fall makes me think that he's going to be able to pick up the offense and build upon the confidence that he was able to gain from playing so well in that Alamo Bowl. So all things considered, I really think Sark is the guy for the job. I do. Now, will they win a national championship under him? I don't know, but I think that's the expectation at Texas. I think they have a chance to be a top 3 team potentially in the Big 12. Will that be this year? Maybe not. Will it be in the future years? I think if they give him enough time, he has the schematics. He has the experience to be able to build Texas back up. It's going to take some time. Will he get time from these boosters and from this university? That remains to be seen, but I think Sark has the makeup of being the right fit for this job because he's been at high pressure, high prestige programs before, and the guy just knows X's and O's like the back of his hand. That's it for us here at The Hard Count. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. As always, we will keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.